opening scene, we are first introduced to our music duo, Ruben and Lou. Ruben is the drummer and Lou is the vocalist. She does very intense punk rock music, and Ruben is her boyfriend slash drummer. They live inside an RV and they go around from town to town just doing gigs, trying to make as much money as possible. They lead a pretty simple lifestyle. And they get to a new town to do another gig, and as they were setting up their merch, Ruben gets this really loud buzzing in his ear and he goes a little deaf. His drumming that night was pretty good, but he just followed Lou's cue. He didn't really hear much. In the morning, he gets up to find that he's almost completely deaf. He can't hear a damn thing. So he thinks that it's some kind of infection or something, and he goes to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist can't even communicate with Ruben because Ruben can't hear a damn thing. And the pharmacist calls a doctor, and Ruben goes to the hospital. And the doctor runs a couple tests, and he tells Ruben that he has severe hearing loss. And whether his hearing loss was caused by loud noise or some kind of autoimmune system or something, the doctor tells him that he has to stay away from loud noises. And the best thing that he can do now is preserve whatever kind of hearing he has left. The doctor also tells Ruben about an operation that he can do that's gonna cost about 40 to 80,000 bucks, and it's only used for people with severe hearing loss or complete deafness. Ruben doesn't really have that kind of money, and he was supposed to take the doctor's advice and avoid loud noises, but he goes to another gig that same night and he keeps drumming. And in the middle of one song, he goes almost completely deaf. All of a sudden, he gets a panic attack, he walks outside, his girlfriend Lou walks outside with him, and he tells her what's wrong. And at this point, they were in a diner, and Ruben can't make out anything she's saying. He's completely deaf, he can't hear a damn thing. And she tells him that they can't really do the tour that they've booked because it's so dangerous to his hearing now. If they keep doing more gigs, Ruben's gonna be really hurt. And seeing that Lou can't really do the tour because of his condition, Ruben gets a little anxious and he goes outside to grab a smoke. And apparently Ruben's an addict and he's had a lot of problems in the past, and the fact that he's smoking now is a signal that he's gonna do a lot of drugs in the future. So Lou immediately calls Ruben's old sponsor, and Ruben's old sponsor, Hector, hearing the situation, calls them back in a few hours, and he tells them about this place that Ruben can go to because of his condition now. So they drive out to this place. It takes them a couple days to get there, and when they get there, they meet Joe. This place is some kind of retreat for deaf people, and Joe is like the leader there. And Joe uses this app on a computer, some kind of dictation app that writes down everything that he says to communicate with Ruben. And he explains how this thing really works. He tells them that they have to stay here and that the church can just sponsor him and he doesn't really need money, but if he does decide to stay, it has to be on his own. He can't stay here with Lou, and Lou has to go away if Ruben's gonna stay here and actually learn to live with deafness. And Ruben can't have a phone, he can't have a computer, he can't have anything. He has to be completely isolated from the outside world, and that's pretty much the only way that this is gonna work. And hearing that he can't really be with Lou anymore, Ruben just declines the offer and he goes back to his RV and they just drive off. And in the morning, Lou gets woken up by a very loud noise of Ruben just breaking shit. And he's doing that because he's so upset about his condition. He can't hear anything. And when Lou tells him that he has to go back to that place because he needs the support that Joe and that camp can offer him, Ruben gets very upset. He starts to tell Lou that she's the one that needs to support him and that he's not going back to that place. Lou takes a few calls and she gets a cab and she leaves. She tells him that she's getting on a plane and that he's going back to that place. He gets incredibly agitated and upset by the fact that Lou left him, but he realizes that his only option now is to just go back to Joe in that camp. So he packs up his stuff and he goes there. Joe takes his phone and his car keys and he gives him a room to sleep in. And Ruben becomes part of the group. They have a daily circle where they talk about their addiction. Ruben tells everyone that he can't speak sign language and that he's a heroin addict that's been clean for about 4 years now. But even though he's still surrounded by people just like him, Ruben feels isolated because they can communicate with each other because they can speak sign language and Ruben can't. And in a couple weeks, Ruben gets an assignment just like everybody else at the camp. Everybody does a bunch of tasks around the camp, and Ruben's task was to learn to be deaf. And to learn how to be deaf, Ruben had to be with a lot of deaf people, and Joe takes him to this school for deaf people. And this class that he was in was just full of children who were born deaf. And Ruben was there to understand how to live as a deaf person. He also has another class with adults where he learns sign language. And even though he was doing all these classes and he had a group that supported him, Ruben still felt anxious and he felt like he didn't belong here. All his plans had nothing to do with joining a deaf camp. So one day in the camp, Ruben sneaks into Joe's office and he checks his stuff online. He checks his email and he checks out how Lou is doing. And in a couple days, Joe notices Ruben fixing stuff around the camp. And he talks to Ruben about how he doesn't really need to fix anything, he just needs to be there. Joe notices that Ruben can't sit around not doing anything because Ruben doesn't want to think about the fact that he's deaf. He hasn't made peace with it. So Joe designs this exercise. He tells Ruben that he's gonna wake up at 5 in the morning and he's gonna give Ruben a room and all he has to do is just sit. And when he's sick of sitting, he's gonna have some pen and paper and he just writes about stuff. He can't draw, he just writes about stuff. And it's a simple exercise, but for Ruben, he finds that it's almost impossible to do that. It just upsets the hell out of him. But Ruben doesn't quit the camp, he doesn't quit the lessons, and a few months go by and Ruben becomes really good with his sign language ABCDs, he starts to spend time with children with his condition, and things go well for a while. And Ruben completes some part of his course with Joe's program, and Joe asks him to stay, and that maybe Joe can find him some kind of job that he can do around the camp, and Ruben can always have a place that he can call home. And even though this sounds very nice and inviting, it just scares Ruben, because it makes him realize that he has to face the world now, not as just a regular person, but as a deaf person. And this fear takes over Ruben. So he decides to sell everything that he has, even his RV, just to get money for the operation. And he sells his RV to someone on one condition, that in a few weeks he'd come back with some money and buy it back from that person, because Ruben is convinced that if he has his hearing back, he's gonna get the money, he's gonna get Lou, he's gonna get his life back together, and everything's just gonna be okay. And after he got the operation, the doctors tell him to come back in 4 weeks, and when he goes back to the camp and tells Joe about this whole situation, Joe tells him that he can't really stay. And Ruben asks him for money as well, and Joe tells him that he just looks like an addict and he can't really give him money. And why Joe told Ruben that he can't stay at the camp anymore is because all this time Joe was trying to teach Ruben that being unable to hear is not a disability. But now that he got the surgery, Joe can't have Ruben spending time with the rest of the guys at the camp. Because what Joe's trying to teach them is that they're not disabled. They just have to acclimate to their new condition, and having Ruben around them is gonna signal the fact that they are disabled. That's why he told him that he can't stay at the camp anymore. So for about a month, Ruben stays at this cheap motel and he goes to the hospital and they give him this device, this hearing aid. And Ruben thought that he'd actually be able to hear, but the device and what the surgery did was just trick his brain into thinking that he was hearing. And he can hear a little bit using the device, but it's just this incredibly annoying, distorted sound. And the doctor reminds him that his ears are completely useless at this point. Ruben is pretty disappointed by this, but he takes what he's got and he goes to Lou's father's place because that's where she's staying now. Her father is pretty nice to him, and this is a surprise to Ruben because he's never really liked him. And he finally sees Lou and she's excited to see him as well. But in a day or two, on her father's birthday, as they were in bed, Ruben notices that Lou's not attracted to him anymore. She doesn't want to do the tour, she doesn't want to be an artist anymore, and she doesn't want to be with Ruben. And seeing this breaks his heart because everything that he's done so far was just to get her back, so in the morning, he gets up and just leaves. And on the very last scene, we see Ruben walking in a park, and he sits down on a bench and he can hear this distorted, annoying sound all over him because of the device. And we see him taking off the implants and just enjoying the silence. And from here we understand that Ruben has finally accepted the fact that he's deaf. And this is how the movie ends, boys and girls. What did you think about Ruben's condition? How difficult do you think it is for deaf people out there? Leave your comments in the comment section. Oh yeah, by the way, this is probably one of the most meaningful movies I've watched for you guys. I really encourage you guys to check it out. And like our video, subscribe to our channel. I will see you on the next recap. Bye.